Pedro went into the night twice. The first because he was a night owl, the other because he was a fisherman. The dark night had sunk into the pond, and Pedro, having waded into the water up to his waist, was throwing the atarraya. When it touched the water, its waves whistled, and as they sank, a dim light, shiny, cold light, pretended to be fish. It was cold. Pedro pulled and tugged the fishnet in again and again, but the first catch was a chiribisco. Pedro unrevealed it. His patience was in sync with the silence. The leaves stuck on his net, also fragrant pepescas, alive and flopping as the silver weights were being pulled in. A pocuyo bird was singing his song that sounds like someone saying, Caballero, caballero, behind the palisade, full of palms of Huiscoyol. Pedro called his helper, Natividad's kid, and asked him to bring him a bag.
The kid went into the river and pushed the water ahead of with his neck, went over towards his fisherman and held out the matata. The kid asking Pedro if he has fishing something. A little disappointed, Pedro answered that just something chimbolos and julines. The kid said that it was maybe because it was getting light. Pedro put his hand full full at light into the bait bag while looking at the stars with his mouth agape. Pedro noticed that it was almost 4 in the morning. The kid started to feel cold and say it to Pedro. Pedro answered it was maybe because some wind was coming into the water. Suddenly, the kid say that he has felt like someone has blow his neck. Pedro think what Pedro think it was just because the kid was scary and started to make a joke of it.
The kid started to say he was afraid of the Siguanaba, but I told him not to get scared of such a wordless creature. The kid was shaking, partly for the cold, partly for fear. The kid started to ask Pedro politely to go home because he has felt the blow on his neck again. Pedro started to grumble as he pulled in the net, saying to the kid how coward he was and promising not to take him with him again. Along with the last fish came a feeling of alarm. In the darkness of that night, a few dim stars above reflected on the scale of the fish below, and also from the weaving of the light of the fireflies. A strange noise, strident as the crackle of an old woman, gave electric shock of fear to the neck of the fisherman.
After that, everything was silent. The kid shaking out Pedro's arms. Both were wondering what that song was. The kid was begging Pedro to get out there as soon as possible. He was crying. Pedro threw the fish net over his shoulder, taking the hat he had left on the sand and almost dragging the kid. He better retreat at the trail. And when they reached the plains, the blue dawn of the morning stopped them. It was getting light out. The fear had vanished, sweet like a lump of sugar in a bowl of fresh water. They sighed and they started to ask each other if they believed in the Siguanaba, but they denied it.
Pedro asked the kid if they want to go and find out what was the sound they have heard. The kid didn't want to go, but if Pedro wanted to go, he will wait him. The kid sat on the rock and started to whistle a song to the dawn. Pedro valiantly went down the river. There were still remains of the night in the ravens. He continued down towards the river. On some boulders he discovered a chilamate tree with a thorn limb. It was a thick branch. The white core of the tree has been left exposed. It was vomiting ants. When the kid saw Pedro coming and smiling, the kid asked him what it was. But Pedro just answered it was just a tree laughed.